Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the disappearance of Leanne Tiernan. She was a 16-year-old teenager that actually went missing after trying to return home from a shopping trip with her friend. The missing persons inquiry which followed was one of the largest in the history of the West Yorkshire Police. This case was suggested by Ian, so thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have, and if you have any more, please let me know and I will look into them for you. Leanne was born on the 27th of September in 1984 to parents Michael Tiernan and Sharon Hawkhead. Her parents were married, they started their family, but they did actually get a divorce later down the line. Leanne did also have an older sister called Michelle, who was, I believe, 3 years older than her. Michael didn't actually live with them, so it was Sharon, Michelle and Leanne that all lived in the house together in Bramley, West Yorkshire in England, and they were quite a close little family. Leanne was said to be a really friendly, bubbly girl. She was really thoughtful, she was intelligent, and she was just like a normal, typical teenager. She enjoyed socialising, she enjoyed spending time with her family and friends, and she just loved life. She was also quite an outgoing girl and quite confident. She was a pupil at Westleys High School and was said to have plenty of friends, and generally the way she treated people was kind of always making them feel welcome. Like, that was how she came across. She always managed to make them feel welcome. So on the 26th of November in 2000, Leanne goes out on a shopping trip to do some Christmas shopping with her friend Sarah Whitehouse, who was 15 years old, and they were going to Leeds city centre. So they've been out all morning, all afternoon, enjoying their, doing what teenagers do when they're with their friends on a shopping trip. They'll probably go for food, they'll probably try on loads of outfits and, I don't know, do whatever. They were just enjoying themselves and having fun and doing the Christmas shopping. They'd had enough at around 4:30 p.m. and they caught the bus home back to Bramley. Leanne was reportedly excited to get home because they were having this roast dinner, and roast dinners are amazing. So yeah, she was really excited for that and she was looking forward to it. So they got off the bus and they both started off home. When they got to Huffley Lane, the girls then separated because obviously they didn't really live in the exact same area, so they'd walked as far as they could together and then they were going to split up. Leanne was last seen by Sarah at 4:50 p.m. setting off along a path through like a wooded wasteland area known as Huffley Gill. The path that she was going to go down was unlit and it was quite isolated, and that was the last time that she was ever seen alive again. Sarah gets home and she calls Leanne. She calls Leanne's home because she tried to call her on a mobile a few times and she didn't get an answer, so she decides to call the house phone. Maybe she's left her phone somewhere, I don't know. Sometimes you don't always have it with you. So she calls the house phone hoping to get hold of Leanne, and Sharon answered the phone. She asked to speak to Leanne but was told that she hadn't got home yet. Now Sarah was really confused by this because she definitely should have been home by now. Huffley Lane was less than a mile away, which was only a short walk to Leanne's house, so why hadn't she gotten there yet? Sarah had gotten home around 4:50 p.m. and again, like I said, she tried to ring her but got no response, but she should have been home by now, so she called Sharon and obviously they're chatting. And then Sharon says that she's going to ring her. This was at 5:20 p.m. and she's going to try her daughter as well. So she rings her. She said that it rang for quite a while and then it cut off. She tries again and this time it rings for 4 times and then is cut off. Initially, like with everything, it was hoped that she just stopped off somewhere. Maybe she'd seen a friend. Maybe she got chatting to someone and was delayed because of that. You never ever want to think anything other than that. You always want to think obviously the best possible outcome, which was that she was just chatting to a friend. So she was worried, but she decided to give it a little bit of time just to see whether she came home. When it got to 7:04 p.m, however, too much time had passed. She definitely should have been home by now. Even if she'd just seen a friend out and about and was chatting to him for a little bit, she should have been home by now, especially since she was really looking forward to her tea that night, which was the roast dinner. There's no way she wouldn't come home. So she decides that she's going to ring the police to report her daughter as a missing person. At this point, as just like a side note, her father Michael was actually away on holiday at the time of his daughter going missing, just so you know where he is in all of this. Which must have been so awful. Imagine hearing that you're away on holiday and then hearing that your daughter's gone missing. Oh, it must have been horrific. The investigation began straight away. They quickly started searching the area that she was last known to be in, which was Huffley Gill, because more than likely she's going to be around there, right? Maybe she'd been injured, maybe she'd been attacked and she needed help somewhere. Of course, they're hoping to find her alive. Despite the best efforts, they found nothing, and I mean literally nothing. There was no trace of Leanne whatsoever. No one had come forward to say that they'd seen her after Sarah had, so it appeared that Sarah was the last person to see her alive, and that made people believe that whatever happened to her happened shortly after Sarah had seen her last. It was as if she just vanished off the face of the planet. There was one theory that came out, which was pretty much put to bed straight away, was that she maybe ran away and that she was staying with a friend. Now that was completely out of character for her. Nobody really believed it for very long, and it was quickly kind of dismissed. The searches for her just intensified. They involved up to 200 officers along with volunteers as the news of, her disappearing spread. People came out of the woodworks and all helped to try and find her, to put together search parties and things like that. As it progressed, the investigation would quickly become one of the biggest undertaken ever by the West Yorkshire Police. More than 1,400 house inquiries were done. They searched over 800 houses along the route that they estimated that she might have taken, which the police referred to as the Red Route. They looked in 800 sheds along with garages, outbuildings, literally anything that could be hiding her in. They also looked into 150 commercial premises. They searched the canals, the rivers, woodland, drainage shafts. They drained the drainage shafts of everything that was in them to try and search through them. And this was all in like a half-mile radius around Huffley Gill. Collections of household waste were even halted to allow the police to search through the bins for any evidence that they could find, but they found nothing. They had sniffer dogs out, hoping to catch the scent of her, hoping to catch anything, but no trace of her was ever found in their searches. On the 3rd of December in 2000, after searching for her for a week, their hopes were diminishing, and they decided that they were going to do a reconstruction of her last known movements, and they were going to release that to the public in the hopes that it would jolt someone's memory. Michelle played her sister Leanne, and they released it out. Sometimes seeing something like that can actually, visually seeing it can jog something rather than just hearing about it, and sometimes it does help, so they tried that. Unfortunately, still nobody came forward with any more information, and again it was looking more and more likely that something had happened to her directly after Sarah had last seen her. Police tried their best to find anything, but they had no leads, they had nothing to go on. They didn't find anything, and so it was really difficult. Detectives even sent text messages to her phone, which was at this point had been switched off, but it had briefly been activated on the 27th of November. A local businessman offered a £10,000 reward for any information leading to a safe return. The supermarket chain Iceland printed her picture and details of her on milk cartons across its stores nationwide. They brought in officers all over the force to help with this wide-scale search. Her disappearance was like national news. Her families had done loads of public appeals, and still it brought nothing. They decided to bring in dive teams to search, more of the canals, because at this point it's looking less and less likely that they're gonna find her alive. Unfortunately, the more time that passes, the less unlikely it is. So they're probably thinking along the lines of maybe her body was dumped in a canal or something like that. Despite everything they did and all of the efforts and everything they put into the search, they wouldn't find anything for months and months. On the 20th of August in 2001, which was 9 months after she had gone missing, Leanne's body was found. A man called Mark Bison was walking his 2 dogs in Linley Woods when he came across the grim discovery. On the 22nd of August, the body was confirmed to be that of Leanne's. I believe the police did think it was her because the description that was given of her the day she went missing, well, she was wearing the same clothes, and she still had her hair in a ponytail. She still had the clips in that she was wearing the day she went missing. The only thing she was missing was a coat and a black boots. But they pretty much thought it was her, and it was confirmed to be her from her fingerprints a couple of days later. Her body had been wrapped inside 9 green bin bags and all secured together with twine. There was a black bin bag around her head, which was held on by a leather dog collar. She had also been placed inside a floral pattern duvet cover and buried in a shallow grave. Plastic cable ties had been used as a ligature to strangle her, and more ties had been used to bind her hands, so I believe she had like one tie around each hand and then another tie in the middle, tying them 2 together, kind of like handcuffs in a way. A dark coloured scarf was also wrapped around her neck. Her body was of course sent off for a post-mortem as the police were at the scene. Realistically thinking, after 9 months you're thinking that the body's going to be quite decomposed, being out in the elements and things like that, but it wasn't. And that led people to believe, and forensic experts to believe, that she must have been kept in a cold storage, in a freezer or a cooler or something like that all this time, and then her body was dumped quite recently for the decomposition to be as it was when she was found. It was thought that one of the reasons for this is that the case at the time was red hot, the search was enormous, and so maybe her murderer thought that if they dumped her body straight away, it would be found and they would have been caught. So instead they kept it in a freezer. There's another reason that could be behind it as well, though, that it's some sort of sick trophy, which is just disgusting, and it's just beyond words, really. A cryobiology expert was called in and they analysed the microstructures of her cardiac tissue and concluded that her body, could have been kept in a cold freezer for a very long time before it was then dumped. Police made a public appeal for anyone that might have been around Linley Woods, around the time, maybe someone saw something, and that was when they actually got some information. A retired couple came forward to say a few days prior to her body being discovered, they saw a man pull out a bundle in a floral pattern duvet from his boot and head towards Linley Woods with it. Now, at the time, they didn't really think much of it, but then obviously when it came out that a body had been found, they contacted the police straight away. Even though they now had Leanne's body, they didn't really find any DNA of the killers on it or any usable DNA, which meant it was still going to be really difficult to find out who had done it. They did find some dog hairs on her body along with the dog collar. That obviously made them believe that this person had a dog. They believed that the area to the killer was well known. Maybe they lived in it, maybe they walked the dog in it quite often. So they began to look into that and they came up with 100 suspects, all of which were known to visit the area, some even poached in the area too. Whilst all this was ongoing, they began to test the Armitage leather tan dog collar. And after numerous searches and things like that, they did eventually manage to track it back to the manufacturer and this online website that had actually sold it. It was a company in Liverpool, so they get in touch with them. They ask if they have any private customers from the Leeds area, and guess what? They have one private customer from the Leeds area, who 6 months before Leanne's death had purchased 4 of this same dog collar. They were then delivered to a man that lived on Cockshot Drive, who was called John Taylor. This was actually the same housing estate that Leanne lived on, and John Taylor was already in the suspect list. The 100 suspects that they already had, he was already in that list because they knew he frequented that area and that he had actually poached in the area too. So John Taylor was a 45-year-old man who lived within a mile of Leanne Tiernan to where she was last seen. He was divorced, he lived alone, and he worked for Parcel Force as a driver. Neighbours knew John Taylor as the pet man. He had once overbred dogs and sold pet food and pet accessories at a market stall. And people had no fears about allowing their children to visit him, but he was not the man he appeared to be. As police began to conduct inquiries into him, into his background, they found that he was a frequent user of Lonely Heart advertisements. Through his phone records, they found the women that he had kind of spoke to in relation to that, and they interviewed him. One woman said that he told her that he liked tying women up and locking them in a cupboard. Another said that John had told her that he had a fetish for bondage, whips and ties, and said that he wanted to tie her daughter up with cable ties and have sexual intercourse with her, which is just weird as heck. Why would you say that if you were on like a date with someone about their own daughter? I don't get that. A former girlfriend that I briefly lived with John said that he often visited Linley Woods and they often went there together while they were dating, and that she eventually broke off the relationship because of his bondage fetish and the feeling that she was being raped. When asked by police how John would tie her up, she said that he would use zip ties to tie both arms and then one in the middle to tie them both together behind her back, exactly how Leanne Tiernan was tied up. She said that he kept a bundle of cable ties in a drawer next to his bed. 2 other women said that he enjoyed bondage during sex and had bound their breasts and hands with cable ties. So very quickly, he became the main suspect in Leanne's murder, and on the 16th of October in 2001 was arrested on suspicion of a murder. They searched his home and they found some things, some very incriminating things. The following is just going to be all the evidence that they found against John Taylor in his home. I'm just going to kind of list it off. They found cable ties, the same ones used on Leanne, which was actually ones that the Parcel Force used exclusively. So him working there gave him the prime opportunity to take them. They found the same twine and green bin bags whilst testing the items on Leanne's body. They did find some hair in a scarf, which did eventually match to John, and they also found some dog hair. And John did have a dog at the time of Leanne's disappearance. They sent the hair all the way to the University of Texas, and a partial DNA profile of the dog was created, but police weren't actually able to link that to John's dog because when they found him, it had died. They did dig up his garden and they discovered 4 dog skeletons, one of which skull had been crushed. So it's thought that maybe he killed his own dog in an attempt to hide the fact that he had a dog. Who knows? Traces of red nylon carpet fibres were found on Leanne's clothing, which was said to be very distinctive due to the unusual way in which the fibre had been dyed. When police searched John's home, they quickly realised that he'd recently removed all of his carpet from his house and he had just burnt it. They did, however, manage to find small traces in kind of the carpet nails that you have, and the fibres found in that matched the ones on Leanne's body. I mean, it's pretty suspicious why you're going to burn your carpet anyway. You don't just get rid of your carpet and then burn it. You normally just throw it away. So that was a big, massive suspicion, even if the fibres didn't match. They also found bloodstains under the floorboards, which were matched to Leanne. So they had this huge amount of evidence against John Taylor, and when he was presented with it, he just admitted to it. He didn't really have much of a choice, to be honest. But he didn't admit to what you may think he did. He admitted to kidnapping it, yes, but he denied murder. Oh yeah, he said that was accidental. He said that he hadn't visited Huffley Gill for many years, but by chance he was there that afternoon. He said that she had walked past him and on an impulse he grabbed her from behind, tied her hands behind her back with a dog lead, covered her head with his jacket and forced her to walk to his house. He then forced her into his bedroom and onto her bed, where she then struggled, and during that struggle had fallen off the bed, hit her head on the floor, and then in an attempt to pick her up off the floor, he grabs the scarf that's around her neck and pulls it up, which subsequently kills her, that along with the head injury. It was all a tragic accident. He said that he then panicked and he hid her body under pallets in his back garden for a little while and then dumped her in Linley Woods, which straight away contradicts what forensics found because they found that her body had been frozen. So yeah, that didn't make any sense. And no one believed him. They thought that he was lying in wait that night to find a victim to abduct and potentially murder, which is exactly what he did. On the 15th of February in 2002, John Taylor pleaded guilty to Leanne Tiernan's abduction, but wasn't asked to enter a plea on the charge of murder. But he was sticking to his earlier statement of it being an accident regardless. Pending a separate trial hearing for the murder charge, he was remanded into custody. The prosecution also put forward during the trial that he killed his own dog with a single blow to the head, fracturing its skull to hide his identity. On the 8th of July in 2002, on the first day of his trial, he entered a guilty plea to murder. I think with all the evidence and stuff, he knew that there was no way he was going to get away with murder, and so rather than drag it all out, he just admitted to it. And it probably would have given him a lesser sentence too, rather than them going through all the trial and everything and then to find him guilty. I believe if you just admit it, that you possibly get a bit of a lesser sentence. John Taylor was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 25 years, which would actually later be changed to a minimum of 20 years. The police began to look into other possibilities that he'd attacked other people too. With the way that he attacked Leanne, it kind of appeared like he knew exactly what he was doing, which prompted the thought, had he actually done this before? They already had his DNA profile, so they put it out and they sort of put the feelers out and they actually matched it to a few other cases. So 17 years later in 2018, John was back in court again after pleading guilty to 16 other offences. They were committed against 5 victims spanning 3 decades, and they did include 3 counts of rape. So he will never be released from prison, and in my opinion, rightly so. This case was really sad. Like, Leanne was literally so close to a house and she had gone down this unlit path and she'd just been snatched and murdered, and it's just horrific. She was taken away from her family, from her friends, her life was ended, their lives were destroyed, and for what? My heart really goes out to, you know, her family and everyone involved in this case. But yeah, that is the end of the case. If you have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Leanne Tiernan. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.